Today, we're talking about a king named Hezekiah. And his whole story really boils down to one single thing: trust. And man, did he have to have it, right when his entire world was on the brink of being completely wiped out.
All right, just imagine this for a second. You're the leader of this tiny little nation, and the world's greatest superpower, the most terrifying army on the planet, is right at your gates. They're demanding your surrender. Everything, and I mean everything, is on the line. So, who do you trust? What's your move? Because that's the exact situation that King Hezekiah of Judah found himself in.
So, Hezekiah walks into a total mess. Seriously, the leadership of Judah before him was just this wild roller coaster, right? One king was faithful, the next was a disaster. Hezekiah decides, okay, enough of this. It's time to pick a side. For real.
And this really gets to the heart of it. You've got his grandfather Ahaz on one side. The guy was, well, a rotten king. His whole strategy was simple. Trust the big guy on the block, Assyria. Pay him off, do whatever they say. But then comes Hezekiah. He just completely flips the script. He's called a good man. And his big idea? Trust God. And rebel against that very same superpower. Talk about a gamble. It's a total 180 on foreign policy.
And it wasn't just about politics for him. Oh no, he went all in on reforming the country's entire religious system. He basically went on this massive demolition tour. He tore down all the local shrines, smashed up pagan symbols. He even destroyed a 700-year-old relic that Moses himself had made. Why? Because people had started worshiping the thing instead of God.
Okay, so let's talk about these high places for a second. You got to understand, even the good kings before Hezekiah had left these alone. They were like local community churches. They were easy, they were convenient. So when Hezekiah comes in and just bulldozes them, he's making a really radical and probably unpopular statement. He's basically saying, hey, worship isn't a buffet where you pick and choose. There is one God and one place to worship him properly, the temple in Jerusalem. This was a huge shot across the bow at centuries of tradition. And this quote, this is what really sets him apart. Look, the text doesn't say he was the most perfect king or the one who was most sorry for his sins. Other kings got those titles. Nope. Hezekiah's claim to fame, the one thing that made him unique among all the kings, was his trust. He put all his chips on God. He was willing to bet the farm.
So, what happens when you decide to poke a bear, a giant superpower bear? Well, you're going to pay the price. And the Assyrian emperor, a guy named Sennacherib, showed up to collect.
And the Assyrian response was just swift and totally brutal. Sennacherib just steamrolled through the country. In his own records, he boasts about capturing 46 of Judah's fortified cities. Just stop and think about that. 46! These aren't villages, they're defended cities. And they just fell, one after another after another. It was a blitz, and before they knew it, only Jerusalem was left. Hezekiah's trust? Yeah, it was being put to the test, right now. And in this moment, he blinked. His trust wavered. Who wouldn't panic? So he sends a message to the Assyrian king that basically says, you know what, my bad. I messed up. I was wrong to rebel. Just name your price. I'll pay whatever you want. Just please go away.
Well, Sennacherib named his price, all right, and it was astronomical. He wanted 300 talents of silver. To give you an idea what that is, we're talking about 11 tons. 11 tons of silver. It's just a crazy amount of money, an amount designed to completely break the kingdom's bank.
But wait, there's more. He also wanted a ton of gold. And Hezekiah got so desperate, he literally started stripping the gold plating off the doors of the temple. The very temple he had just spent all this energy purifying. He's tearing apart the house of God to pay off the enemy. The irony is just thick. Okay, so here's the kicker. This is the crucial part. Hezekiah pays this insane tribute. He empties the treasury. Sennacherib takes the gold, takes the silver, and then attacks anyway. The betrayal is just total. Hezekiah tried to buy his way out, and it completely failed. Now Judah is broke, and the Assyrian army is still camped outside the walls.
So at this point, with Jerusalem totally surrounded, the whole game changes. It stops being just a military battle, and it becomes a psychological one, a war of words. Sennacherib sends his top field commander to the walls of the city, not to launch an attack, but to launch an argument, to break their spirit.
And man, the Assyrians really did their homework. This commander launches this brilliant four-pronged psychological attack, and he does it in Hebrew so that every single person on the wall can understand exactly what he's saying. He's not trying to break down the walls, he's trying to break down their minds. to dismantle every last shred of hope they have.
So first up, he goes after their allies. He basically yells, "Are you seriously trusting in Egypt to save you?" And then he gives them this amazing, brutal image. He says, relying on Egypt is like leaning on a cracked stick. It's not just going to break, it's going to splinter and stab you right in the armpit. Ouch! So vivid, so effective.
But then comes the real masterstroke. He takes Hezekiah's own religious reforms and turns them into a weapon against him. He's like, oh, you're trusting in your God Yahweh? You mean the God whose local shrines your king just tore down? You think he's happy about that? No way! Your God is mad at you. In fact, he sent us here to punish you. It's such a smart, insidious argument designed to plant that seed of doubt.
But Sennacherib's not finished. Not even close. He backs off for a minute, but then sends a letter directly to Hezekiah. And this letter contains his final and most devastating argument. He completely reframes the whole situation. This isn't about Assyria versus Judah anymore. This isn't king versus king. No, this is God versus God.
And Sennacherib basically lays out his scorecard. He's saying, look, let's be real. I've rolled through nation after nation. I beat the god of Gozan. I beat the god of Haran. I beat the god of Samaria. I have a perfect record. Every single god that has stood in my way has been defeated. Your God, he's just next on the list.
And that right there, that sets up the final, ultimate question. This isn't about military strategy anymore. It's not about walls or siege engines. This is about the very nature of God himself.
Sennacherib just lays it out so clearly in his letter, and his logic is terrifying because, well, it makes perfect sense from his point of view. He says, look, you've all heard what my family does to other countries. We utterly destroy them. And did any of their gods deliver them? Nope. So what makes you think you'll be any different?
And that's the question we're left with, hanging over the walls of Jerusalem. I mean, the evidence is overwhelming. The logic seems airtight. Every other nation, every other god, they've all fallen before Assyria. So the final crucial question is simply this: is your God any different? He's beaten everyone else. What makes you so special? And what does it really mean to trust when all the evidence in the world is screaming that you are making a fatal mistake?